Well, I've had my Edgun Leshiy 2 now for a good 3 to 4 months, and I've been posting some bits on Facebook about how I've tuned it, and a lot of people are asking me to put this video together. So coming up is a video on how to change the regulator pressure, the needle valves in here, especially useful for those guys sub 12 foot-pound, but also useful for you in FAC that want to optimize your rifle to its maximum capacity. Keep watching, coming up. What's up YouTubers, it's Steve here from Airgunology, another video on the Leshiy 2. Keep watching, I will actually explain how you do the regulator and the needle valve adjustments on here. But before all that, a word from our sponsor, me. Yeah, well, I've got to pay the bills. So don't forget to check out underneath. I'll leave links to everything I'm talking about in this video under the YouTube description. You'll find a Facebook group, 3D printing, where you can get Tri-Aim if you so want it. Our wonderful merchandising forums groups, all sorts. It's all down there. But yeah, I've had the L2 now for a good 3 to 4 months, and I've been tinkering around with it. I got mine from Edgun, Spain, and I've had playing around with it, different barrels and different things on it. And for those guys that are sub 12 foot-pound, then this is quite pertinent to you because of, number one, your rifle, wherever you've got it from, be it from the UK or from Edgun in Spain through Francisco, if you specified it to be set up to be sub 12 foot-pound, then it should already be set up with you the right regulator pressure with the right needle jets in it for the valve timing. It should be all set up. But a lot of you guys obviously do want to tinker with your rifles, play with them, and then of course you've got the guys in FAC that want to maximize the capabilities of this rifle. Also, you got to remember that if you are sub 12 foot-pound and you swap out a 177 barrel up to a 22 barrel, then you are going to have to change the regulator pressure to keep within the 12 foot-pound rule, just like most rifles out there. So I do want to throw a few disclaimers before I run the video. Number one, I'm not a gunsmith, so please take it easy with these rifles. Whatever you do, make sure you degas them. I'm just showing you what I've been taught and shown. If you're in any doubt, please go to a reputable air rifle dealer and they can help you out, or check out on the Edgun forums on there. But and the other thing as well is that no matter what you do to your rifle, it is up to you, being sub 12 foot-pound, to ensure that you're underneath 12 foot-pound to make sure you're within the law. But anyway, let's crack on with it. I know you guys want to see this, so I'm going to run a little VT here about how to strip this rifle down, how to change the regulator, and also how to change the needle jets as well. Alright guys, so I want to talk to you about how to tune up your Leshiy 2. And again, word of warning, if you do not know what you're doing, do not attempt this. You're dealing with compressed air. There is a high probability that you could wreck your rifle. And also, for those guys that are sub 12 foot-pound, this is for those that want to tune the rifle, get the best out of it. Remember, you're responsible to make sure that thing's under sub 12 foot-pound when you've finished. Okay, so let's walk about the components here. So at the bottom, we have air reservoir. Now, I have a replacement bottle. The standard Leshiy comes like so. And I'll leave down the bottom the CC differences in there. Obviously you're going to get increased shot count with this. The air reservoir, also there is an air reservoir up the top here as well. This is the plenum. Now I have a replacement plenum from Francisco at Edgun Shop Spain. This is the standard plenum. You can see it's slightly longer. and if it's that way, goes around that way round, slightly longer. I've got mine, it makes the stock a little bit shorter for me, plus also it gives a little bit better air efficiency. So those are the basic components of it. At the back here we have the air reservoir. You notice that the air gauge, you notice I've got air in. So the very important, the very first thing you must do is you must bleed the system out, because you're dealing with compressed air. Now to do that you're going to need, and I believe it is a 2mm, let me just double check. Yes, I think it's a 2mm. So you're going to need a 2mm Allen, and just at the tip here, and I'll leave a picture of this, but just up the tip here you'll see a little Allen bolt in here, and make sure you've got a good Allen key for this, because you do not want to wreck this. Wrong size. Let me get the right size out here. There it is. So you want I think it's a 2mm. I'll double check and leave it on the bottom, and you just need to flip it open and you'll hear the air rushing out. Okay, so now we have all of the air drained out the system, and like I said, very gently take out the plenum, being careful of this O-ring here, very important. We can place the air reservoir out to one side now. Okay, so how does this whole system work? Well, basically what we have is the plenum up here that is set via the regulator. Now generally for sub 12 foot-pound it will be about 65 bar. So we've got 65 bar of working pressure in here, and that is all released through the power puck at the back. Now if you're sub 12 foot-pound, it's recommended that that should be between 2.5 and 3 millimeters. I've set mine to 2.5 millimeters, and I can check that with an Allen key, which is a 2.5mm Allen key, and slides it in there. You remember, everything I'm talking about here is sub 12 foot-pound, but the principles are basically the same for any power usage or caliber that you're using on here. Inside here there are two needle jets or valve controllers, and basically this is how they come from the Edgun shop if you want to get replacements on here. And what happens is, as the air is released, the bigger the diameter of these jets, the quicker the valve will close, therefore the less air is wasted, and therefore your shot count should increase, i.e. you get better efficiency. So what we're going to look at here is replacing these jets that I've got from Edgun shop in Spain, and I'm going to look at replacing them, as well as adjusting the regulator. So if you look on the Edgun shop, and I'll leave some links and some screenshots here, basically what he's recommending is that you use a 2.5mm hole, and then for 2.2 you should be using a 1mm, 2 times 1mm of jets, and for 177 you should be using a 1mm and a 0.9mm jet hole size. So how do we get out the jets? Quite simply, is all we do is we unscrew and get into the back of the regulator and the plenum. And so at this stage you can see how beautifully engineered this all is. Okay, and there's your jets there, and here's the two jets. Now, depending on where you got yours from, these may be or maybe not marked. If you do get them from Francisco, they are definitely marked up in small letters on here, 0.5, 0.6, etc. millimeters on here. Now, the way that you get these out is you've got to be very careful. Try and get yourself a very small spanner on there to do that. Now, I used, and it's probably not the best way, but I was extremely careful. I used some tape on the end, some needle pliers, and just slowly just turned them and worked them out, and then replaced them. So I've got a 1mm and a 0.9mm jet in here as recommended, with a 2.5 puck size hole, millimeter puck size hole. This whole section does twist out, so if this happens to you, don't worry about it, don't be too scared about it. But basically that will all slot out, and in here you will find a very tiny, it looks like a hammer head here, and that is the bit that opens and closes the valve. So you can see the jet sizes, the bigger the jet sizes, the quicker this will move, the quicker it will shut the valve. If you do actually end up with this coming out, then basically make sure that the tapered end goes in first, into the end like so, replace that over, and then tighten it back down. So that's your first process to tune up to sub 12 foot-pound, or again, same principle for any other poundage that you're running at, is replace your two jets on that. Once you've got your two jets replaced, you can then screw this all back together, and that's the jetting done, which controls the valve timing. The next part to do then is you need to set your regulator, and your regulator is what sets your overall power. So at the moment this could be running at 13-14 foot-pound. So the first thing I would do is, once I replace the jets, is I'd put it all back together, gas the rifle back up and run it over a chronograph and see what I'm running. Now when I did it, I was running about 12.5 foot-pound. So what I need to do now is I need to reduce the regulator barrage and drop it down. To do that, there's a little screw on here, a nut on here. Now this nut here is a 4mm Allen key, and it is reverse thread, so it's clockwise to undo it, like so, and be very gentle with it and take that out. Now this is just a cover plate for the regulator to keep it safe, and inside the regulator in there is a 2mm Allen bolt on there. Now this is very, very sensitive, and it doesn't take much movement to change this. Now if you turn it clockwise, you will decrease the regulator power and decrease the power, the energy of your pellet. You turn it anti-clockwise, you'll increase it. And a very, very rough rule of thumb is for every 5 minutes on, you imagine a clock hand, for every 5 minutes is about 5 bar. Now mine is running a little bit too hot at the moment, so I need to drop mine down a little bit. So I'm just going to drop it down, and I'm going to, because I want to drop it down and decrease the power, I'm going to turn it clockwise just in that. Just a little bit like so. Once I've done that, nice and simple, is we just replace. Remember, this is a reverse thread, so it can be a bit fiddly. Let's reverse and then put the protective cover back on. Don't go overboard on this, just nip it just tight, just enough like so. So what we've done now is we've changed the jetting and we've changed the regulator pressure. And basically you keep repeating that process. So you put the rifle back together, you fill it back up, make sure that you fill it to over 110 bar, something like that, just to make sure you got the right regulator, you're not bouncing off the regulator. Fill it up again, run it over a chrono. If your pellet is running too hot, too fast, then reduce your regulator and repeat the process. Don't forget that each time you're going to have to degas the rifle every time you do this, using the process that we did before. So that is basically the way that you tune up for a sub 12 foot-pound rifle. Now like I said, this should come like this if you buy it from UK, if you buy it from Francisco in Edgun, Spain, and you request it to be sub 12 foot-pound, this should be all done for you. But the major reason you need to know about this is if you decide that you're going to change barrels. So for example, if I want to use a .22 barrel, then I'm going to have to go through this process. Now the chances are I can use the same jetting on here. I might want to go with the recommendation of a 1mm and a 1mm for 22 instead of a 1mm and a 0.9mm. But I could probably get away with that. But certainly once I put 22 on here, 22 pellets require less air to go at the same energy, therefore I am going to have to degas and reduce my regulator down to bring me down to sub 12 foot-pound. For you guys that are over sub 12 foot-pound, slapping a 22 barrel on here and running at 4 or 5 pounds higher is not going to worry you. You just got to worry about your point of aims and your holdovers and hold unders and your 0 points. But yeah, that does actually mean that you guys that are running sub 12 foot-pound, you know, swapping a barrel out is not just a simple process of putting the barrel in and away you go. Because if you're running at 11.5 foot-pound or 177, you slap in a 22 barrel, you will be over 12 foot-pound. So if you're going to do that, you're sub 12 foot-pound, you're swapping barrels, you're going to need to know how to do this procedure. And that is basically, I would suggest, probably just changing the regulator and running it over a chrono. But again, then to assemble it all back together is basically the reverse of how we did it all. Again, be extremely careful of that O-ring on there. I just wiggle it in slowly, and this is beautifully engineered that it should just all fit perfectly back together and line up absolutely perfect. So just screw it all back together like so. Final turn, perfect. And then the final thing is, if I can find my Allen key, is to make sure that you've actually nipped up the bleed valve on here so that when you fill up it doesn't all leak out. So that is the basic procedure of how to tune up your Leshiy 2. The bits and pieces that you will need if you're going to do all of this lot is to get hold of these jets, these nozzle jets. Now I know Francisco from Edgun Spain has them on the website with the list of recommendations, which sizes to get for which powers, for which caliber rifles, etc. to get from there. And above all, remember please that if you do this, that you're responsible to make sure it's under sub 12 foot-pound. You guys that are FAC, well, you're lucky, you can run it anything you want. After that, well, let's crack back to the studio. Okay guys, hopefully that video was useful for you. I know I've been asked about it a lot, about changing the regulator pressure. Now remember, with the regulator pressure, you are going to be required to do that if you're sub 12 foot-pound and you're swapping out a barrel. Now that sort of brings me on to one thing about this rifle here is, yes, you can swap the barrels out, but it's not just a simple process of taking one barrel out, throwing it in. You are going to need to break down the rifle, change the regulator pressure to make sure you're within that 12 foot-pound law. If you guys are FAC, then obviously you don't have that problem, but chances are you're still going to want to play around with it to get the most out of the rifle. Now I found that when I actually did this modification onto my rifle and tweaked around with it with the help from Francisco, is that I actually got about a 20% shot increase, because my rifle came with standard jets, needle jets, because I was one of the very first to get hold of it from Francisco. Now that I've got the needle jets out, I swapped them out, I'm getting about, like I said, an extra 20% shot counts. The extra bottle on here actually does take me up from a 150cc up to a 415cc, so that's a 265 increase, which again gives me even more shot count. I'm getting I can only fill this up to about 220 bar, whereas the maximum is 300, and when I run it down to about 70 bar just off the reg pressure, then I'm getting a good 140 plus shots. In fact, it's that much that I just don't even bother counting it, which is not too bad out of such a small little rifle on here. But yeah, really impressed with it. It's dead easy. All of the links that you need is, I'll leave them down in the video description on YouTube for the different jetting sizes that you can use for the different calibers and the different power that you've got. On the Edgun Spain website, there's a full description and a full list of all of the different recommendations and where you can get the needle jets if you do want to start tuning. Like I said, if you do order from those guys or anyone in the UK, the rifle should already come set up sub 12 foot-pound. This is really for those that want to tinker and want to play around a little bit. Also, another useful thing to have with this rifle would be to have a regulator pressure checker on here, which I don't, so that sort of made my process a little bit longer. So what I'll do is I'll put in the needle jets recommended, I think it was 1mm and a 1mm for 177. I then set the regulator, I fired some test shots out and then tweaked the regulator up or down to get me at my sub 12 foot-pound. And I also, as always when you do this, is I used 177 heavy pellets, which ran me at about 11.9 foot-pound, and then when I go back to my normal pellets, then I'm running about 11.2 foot-pound. Always make sure you're underneath that 12 foot-pound. So always, if you are hitting a certain target, use heavy pellets. But anyway, like I said, lovely rifle, beautiful engineered when you start to strip this rifle down. It really fairly simple to do that sort of work on it. You don't need a minimal amount of tools. Just be careful, be gentle, and if you don't know what you're doing, like I said, give it to an RFD to let them do it. But I'd love to know your thoughts on it as well. I've fallen in love with my little Leshiy 2 here. It's such a beautiful little rifle. Put it on a prismatic scope on here. Really nice. So love to know your thoughts in the comments. Leave them down below and I'll catch you on the next video.